Hi, my name is Shayan Monadjemi, and I will be presenting our Euroviz paper titled Human-Computer Collaboration for Visual Analytics, an Agent-Based Framework. Let's begin by recalling how visual analytics emerged as a field. In the mid-2000s, Thomas and Cook coined the term visual analytics as the science of analytical reasoning facilitated by interactive visualizations. 3 years later, in 2008, Daniel Keim and his colleagues augmented this definition to include automated analytical techniques, which broadly we can refer to as artificial intelligence. In a sense, visual analytics was an interdisciplinary field that combined our wealth of knowledge about humans and machines. The resulting human-machine team would then have the strengths of the both entities and give us the best of both worlds. Fast forward to 2 decades later, researchers have made significant progress in better understanding humans and building more intelligent machines. On the visualization and human-computer interaction side, we have learned how humans perceive data visualizations, how they make decisions in light of data, and how to build effective interfaces to support their workflows. On the artificial intelligence side, we have developed algorithms that learn from various kinds of data, generate new data, and make optimal decisions in complex scenarios. In this talk, we focus on the intersection of these two fields, which contains much of visual analytics research. There are questions in each field that the other field can help answer. For example, visual analytic techniques can help AI researchers incorporate domain expert knowledge into their models and algorithms. On the other hand, AI techniques can help visual analytics researchers uncover user goals by observing their interactions and assist them in their analytic sessions. We argue that to better facilitate interdisciplinary research on the intersection of visual analytics and artificial intelligence, we need a common language to foster a connection between the two fields. To better understand and characterize this intersection, we conducted a systematic literature review summarized by this prisma diagram. Considering the pool of visual analytics research papers from the past 2 decades, we extracted 50 papers which considered some form of human-AI partnership or mixed initiative setting for visual analytics. Let's look at some patterns we found. In existing frameworks, such as the affordance-based framework, researchers have viewed visual analytics as a human-machine partnership where each entity brings its unique strengths to the table. For example, unique strengths of humans include visual perception, sociocultural awareness, and domain knowledge. Unique strengths of machines, on the other hand, include computational power and large storage. In our literature review, we focused on mixed initiative visual analytics settings, and we noticed that existing frameworks do not capture an important aspect of these settings. In analytics sessions, it is no surprise that analysts make decisions and initiate actions. In mixed initiative settings, the idea is that machines can also make decisions and initiate actions. While the existing frameworks of visual analytics are rich in detail, they do not capture this joint decision-making process. Hence, we split the machine into two separate entities in our framework. So let's look at these three entities. First, we have the human agents who are able to make decisions and initiate actions. Second, we have the visual analytics environment. And third, we have artificial agents who can also make decisions and initiate actions. Human analysts may consist of people such as data analysts, decision makers, or domain experts. The visual analytic environment would be a set of objects, circumstances, and constraints by which the agents are surrounded. In the case of visual analytics, we can consider datasets, visual interfaces, and hyperparameters to be part of the environment. Finally, the artificial agents are the guidance engines, autonomous tasks, or models that contribute to the task at hand. In this agent-based framework, agents perceive their environments and they take actions accordingly. This may look oddly familiar to you, and you're right. We have seen a similar framework in introductory AI courses where AI agents perceive their environment and they take actions upon it. Okay, so once we define each of the entities in this agent-based framework, in the case of visual analytics, then we can also characterize different settings using similar attributes as those used in the AI literature. Let's go through some of them together. Looking at the top arrows, we can consider how much knowledge each agent may have about the impact of their interactions on the environment. For example, an expert data scientist may know exactly how tweaking various hyperparameters may impact model performance. This could constitute the data scientist's full knowledge towards their environment. On the other hand, a novice data scientist may explore the viable parts of the hyperparameter space by trial and error, which constitutes that they have partial knowledge towards the environment. Next, we look at the visual analytic environment and some of its characteristics. Here, we can ask whether the environment responds deterministically or stochastically to actions. In deterministic environments, a given action always results in the same output given the same start state. In stochastic environments, however, there may be some randomness or uncertainty involved. With regards to the environment, we can also ask whether the environment is static or dynamic. Dynamic environments evolve over time, whereas static environments remain constant. Next, we look at the bottom arrows denoting actions' perception of their environment. Here, we can ask to what degree can agents observe their environment. In some cases, agents can fully observe their environment, whereas in other cases, agents can only partially observe their environments. Finally, let's consider the agents themselves. Here, we can ask a set of questions, such as how many agents are acting upon the environment? Are the agents cooperative? Are the agents collaborative? And what is the high-level behavior of the agents? Now, this is the agent-based framework that we propose for visual analytics. Using this agent-based framework, we argue that we can do three things. First, we can describe the full visual analytic pipeline. Second, we can characterize high-level analytic behavior. And third, we can reason about the design of mixed initiative visual analytic systems. To demonstrate how we can reason about visual analytics settings using this agent-based framework, we provide three case studies from the literature in our paper. In this presentation, I will discuss the first one, which is on finding Waldo. In this entertaining and simple game, players are presented with a picture of some crowded garden, and they are asked to find one particular character whose name is Waldo. We can see a picture of Waldo on the right-hand side of this slide. Players can zoom and pan on this image until they find Waldo, and then they click on the Found button. In this case, Waldo is hidden in the bushes as it shows on figure A on the left side. The trick is that there are other characters that are dressed similarly to Waldo, but they are not Waldo. These characters are shown in figures B and C's, and we call them distractor characters. While this is just a game, it mimics some characteristics of real-world visual search tasks, such as satellite image analysis and intelligence analysis. So the authors of this original paper conducted a user study on this game, where they captured user interactions throughout the session, and they were able to utilize machine learning to predict expected task performance and user personality traits just by observing the user's interactions. That's all the detail we need for this study, so let's apply our framework to it. First, let's use our framework to describe this visual analytic pipeline. Our human agent here is the novice user who's playing the game. The environment consists of the image of the garden, Waldo's image, and the interface buttons. And we can say that the artificial agent is a predictive model which infers task performance and personality traits of the player. The player interacts with the environment by taking a sequence of actions, including panning in one of the four directions, zooming in and zooming out, reporting Waldo's location, or quitting the game. In response to these interactions, the player can perceive the updated view of the garden. The artificial agent here is able to observe player interactions with the interface and infer their personality trait and how long it takes for them to complete the task. Now that we have specified the components of this visual analytics setting, let's characterize it using the attributes discussed earlier. We argue that the agents are fully knowledgeable about the impact of their actions on this environment because it is an intuitive, simple, and familiar interface. In regards to the environment, we argue that the environment responds deterministically to actions. In other words, pressing the up arrow from a given view will always result in the same updated view. Furthermore, this environment is static. For instance, it would be dynamic if the characters were moving on the map. Let's look at the bottom arrows for each agent. We argue that the data is fully or partially observable to the human users, depending on the zoom level. At higher zoom levels, the players won't be able to see as many details, whereas on the lower zoom levels, they can see more details. The user interactions are fully observable to the artificial agent. Lastly, we would argue that there is really one human agent present in this setting. While the authors take an important step towards building an artificial agent, we do not consider this to be a mixed initiative setting, since the artificial agent does not take any actions upon the environment. Next, let's look at how we can use our framework to characterize high-level analytic behavior of the players. Going back to this view, we argue that the human agent primarily exhibits a goal-based behavior. Let's take a closer look at different kinds of high-level behavior the player may exhibit. In the goal-driven behavior, which we consider to be the primary one for this game, the player is aiming to find Waldo, and that goal drives their interactions with the interface. In the utility-driven behavior, the player acts a bit differently because they want to find Waldo as quickly as possible, assuming their utility is defined to be a function of time and target identification. And lastly, in the model-based reflex behavior, the player might be using some mental heuristics while searching for Waldo. For instance, they may be looking for people wearing beanies at the parts of the map that contain the color red. We assert that when characterizing analyst behavior, these options are not necessarily mutually exclusive, since a user may exhibit multiple behaviors at once. Lastly, let's wrap up by talking about how this framework may help us reason about the design of mixed initiative visual analytic systems. As we saw earlier, the diagram for the Waldo system is missing the arrow where artificial agents take actions upon the environment. This highlights an opportunity to ask what kinds of artificial agents can be built to make this system mixed initiative. There can be many options, but we'll look at two here. The first one is in line with building personalized visual analytic systems that cater to individual differences such as personality traits and expertise. Here, we can design systems that infer users' personality traits and their expertise towards a task, and in turn, tailor the interface and the degree of guidance to meet their needs accordingly. In the second example, we can look at goal recognition techniques and applying them to user interactions. For example, we could imagine an artificial agent which detects that the users are focusing on red beanies, and in turn, highlight the instances on the map for easier identification. In conclusion, In this paper, we conducted a systematic literature review of mixed initiative visual analytic research in the past 2 decades. Then, we proposed an agent-based conceptual framework to reason about visual analytics and bridge the gap between visual analytics and artificial intelligence. Finally, we demonstrated how to reason about existing and future visual analytic systems using our framework. At this moment, I would like to thank my advisors and collaborators on this project. I would be happy to answer any questions via email, and I invite you to read our paper. Thank you.